What's up? Jeff from RetroArcadeGaming.com. That's all one word. Back with another edition of Port Battles. In this series, we take a look at a specific classic arcade game and see how well or poorly it's been ported to various home console and computer systems over the years. Today, we take a step back to the Nintendo realm and take a look at the 1982 classic Popeye. For those of you that don't know, Popeye was originally going to be the character set in Donkey Kong, but Nintendo was unable to secure the rights from King Features. Thankfully, we ended up with Jumpman, Pauline, and Donkey Kong instead, and the rest is history. After Donkey Kong's success, King Features agreed to license the Popeye characters to Nintendo. I don't really recall Popeye the cartoon being wildly popular in the early 80s. It may have been on Saturday mornings, but it was no He-Man or even Looney Tunes for that matter. I've never watched more than 20 minutes of the 1980 Popeye movie starring Robin Williams. It just wasn't my cup of tea. I could never really see Shelley Duvall as Olive Oyl. She will always be Wendy Torrance from The Shining to me. Rants aside, gameplay in Popeye the video game is fairly straightforward and takes place over 3 levels. The dock level, where Olive Oyl throws hearts. The serenade level, or street building level, where she throws musical notes. And the ship level, where she throws individual letters spelling help. You must collect the thrown items before they reach the bottom of the screen. If they reach the bottom, you only have a short amount of time to collect them before losing a life. You must avoid Brutus, or Bluto. He is listed as Brutus on the arcade game flyer, who can jump from floor to floor and swipe at you from above. He will throw bottles at you, as will the Sea Hag, who occasionally appears to the side of the screen. A buzzard appears on the ship level, and skulls are also thrown as difficulty increases. You have a can of spinach at your disposal. Why wouldn't you? It's Popeye, which gives you 10 seconds of invincibility and allows you to punch Brutus off the screen. The dock level features a bucket you can drop on Brutus's head, rendering him incapable for a period of time. The serenade level, or street building level, features a seesaw with Wimpy and Sweet Pea that you can use to avoid Brutus. I'll admit, Popeye is not my favorite game from a gameplay perspective. However, it is one of the most visually appealing games from the time frame. When this game first came out, I think everybody's jaw dropped the first time they saw it. Just a beautiful game on an arcade screen. With that, here's a look at the 1982 arcade release of Popeye via MAME. First, the Magnavox Odyssey², which we haven't looked at yet, simply because it didn't receive a whole lot of arcade ports. Once you get a look at this port, I think you'll understand why and probably conclude that that's a good thing. The platform just wasn't capable of delivering a quality port due to its hardware limitations. Like most of the ports we'll look at today, this was released by Parker Brothers. The only variance will be the year. This one from 1982. The port is single level only, the dock level. Some of the stairs have been replaced with elevator type things on the side of the screen, which you may or may not be able to get on. I haven't figured that out yet. Our characters have been relegated to stick figures. There's no sea hag, no bucket drop, and if the hearts reach the bottom, you'll actually have to punch them to make Popeye bend over and pick them up. The sounds are subpar, pretty much what I'd expect from the platform. Have a look. The Atari 2600 port was released by Parker Brothers in 1983. Surprisingly, this port features all three levels, which is somewhat of a rarity for the 2600. Most ports eliminate a level or two. Donkey Kong's a good example of that, which only had 2 levels. This is a pretty good port by 2600 standards. The music is excellent, plays throughout as it should. The characters aren't real detailed and are single colors, but really, did you expect much detail from a 2600 port? The Sea Hag doesn't actually appear, just the bottles. There's no bucket drop. The punching animation leaves a bit to be desired, but actually, this is a commendable effort for the Atari 2600. The Intellivision port is another 1983 Parker Brothers release. This is a bit more colorful than the 2600 release and has a bit more detail in the characters. Not a ton, but enough to make it noticeable. All of the elements are present, including the bucket and Sea Hag. Wimpy and Sweet Pea are not present on level 2, but my complaint with this port is the music and its lack of fluidity. It is interrupted by any other sound effect. Punching, going up and down stairs, falling from level to level. Anything you do starts the music over. You will literally hear the same 10 seconds of music over and over and over again. It gets pretty annoying. It gets pretty tiresome. Here's a look at the Intellivision port from Parker Brothers. Parker Brothers released a port for the Commodore 64 in 1983. Again, this one sounds pretty good and looks pretty good. It's a bit more vibrant than the Atari 8-bit port. A few of the character models could use some tweaking, especially Olive Oil up there at the top, who's kind of short and frumpy and looks nothing like the tall, skinny gal she's supposed to be. As far as gameplay, it plays pretty well. The Commodore 64 port by Parker Brothers, 1983. The ColecoVision port was released in 1983, again by Parker Brothers. This one sounds good. The character models are probably the best we've seen so far, but they do lack some color, especially Popeye. Overall, this is a nice playable port on the ColecoVision. The Apple II release, it's not a port, is not officially licensed, was released by Software Computer in 1984. If you had high hopes for this one, you probably should just skip ahead about 2 minutes in the video so you're not disappointed. If you remember the 80s, there were all these computer magazines that had programs in the back that you could type in, and then magic would happen when you pressed run, provided you didn't mistype anything. This thing looks like one of those programs you typed in from the back of one of those magazines. The stairs are missing, replaced with ladders. There's no character animation climbing those ladders. The sounds are awful. I'm just going to leave it at that. That's all I'm going to say about this port. It's pretty bad. The Atari 5200 port and 8-bit port were both released by Parker Brothers, one in 83, the other in 84. The ports are almost identical to one another. They sound decent, play pretty well. They're not bad ports, although they lack some of the details I would like. I've always said they were a bit muted. That was touched upon in an updated version of the port, which was released in 2015, offering tweaked controls, hacks, character improvements, and high-res title screens. The updated version was then ported to the 8-bit system as well. Here's the original 5200 port for starters. Just for comparison, here's a look at the original 8-bit port, which is almost identical to the 5200 port. we'll go ahead and just take a look real quick at the updated port for the Atari 5200. You can see the character models are a bit better defined, not quite that muted feel that I talked about earlier. This is a pretty good update for the 5200. The TRS-80 color computer did not get an official release, but instead got the Tom Mix software clone Sailor Man, released in 1984. It is colorful, I'll say that. Sounds are pretty minimal, but it looks like Popeye, plays like Popeye. It's not a bad clone for the Coco, but it's not arcade accurate either. The Texas Instruments TI-99 4A got an official Parker Brothers port in 1984. This is actually a pretty solid effort. It lacks background music, has decent character models, and plays like Popeye should. It's not great by any means, but it's a playable and pretty good effort when you consider the platform. Nintendo released its own port in 1986 for the NES. The Famicom got one, I think it was 83, as one of the original launch titles. This is a pretty good port and plays pretty close to the original. It does look a bit cartoonish, more cartoonish than the arcade original, but it plays well. It's kind of weird to say a port based on a cartoon has a more cartoonish look to it. I'm not even sure if that makes sense, but I think you'll know what I'm trying to say when you see the character models in this one. The sounds in this port are very good. The one thing that's a little odd, a little out of place, is that you can climb up and down the middle ladder on the dock level. It's unique to this port and this port only. Overall, though, this is a very good port, as you would expect from Nintendo with one of their flagship titles. The Amiga got an official port of the Commodore 64 port called Real Popeye in 1993. It features an enhanced Amiga graphics mode that quite frankly doesn't look that much different than a C64 graphic mode, or the original graphic mode. As expected, it looks and plays pretty similar to the Commodore 64 port. It's nothing really to get overly excited about, considering it came out some 9 years later and the Amiga was capable of so much more. Here's a look at the port featuring the Amiga graphics mode.
...2008 saw Namco release Popeye as a mobile phone Java game. It features two graphic modes, original and enhanced, and also includes a new dream level where Olive throws Z's. She's sleepwalking and throws Z's to Popeye. And it also includes a bonus stage. It looks and sounds phenomenal. Now, keep in mind that for the sake of this presentation, this was designed to go on mobile phones with a 230 by 320 or smaller native resolution. So I'm upscaling that so it fills our screen at least top to bottom. So it's going to lack some crispness as a result of that scaling. We've blown the native original image probably 3.5 times what it's supposed to be. At its original resolution, it looks great. If you've got a old mobile phone, if you have a device to play this on, this is a fantastic port. Let's take a look first at the original arcade graphics mode. Next, the enhanced graphics mode for the 2008 Namco mobile phone port.
Parker Brothers prototype from 1984 exists for the ZX Spectrum that never saw a wide-scale release. There's no sound accompanying the game. It's pretty rough around the edges, but it really isn't too bad for the ZX Spectrum. With a bit of sound and a few tweaks, this actually could have been a decent release. Go ahead and take a look at yourself. The ZX Spectrum prototype from 1984. This next one, I'm not even sure why I'm including this. This is a homebrew port of Popeye for the Spectrum by Gabriel Amore from 2016. I'll play this one for about 10 seconds because that's about all the longer I can play it without repeatedly dying. The stairs don't connect, so there's this jumping thing where you have to do to jump from the top stair to actually the level you want to get to. The hearts pour out too quickly. This is just not a whole lot of fun. There's so much wrong with it. It's not among my favorites, especially when you consider how late it was released in the game. I'd skip this one if you want to play Popeye and hunt down the prototype instead. That's actually not a bad play. No offense to Mr. Amore. Finally, 2015 saw a homebrew port for the VIC-20, released by Beamrider. You'll need to max out the memory on your VIC-20 to run this port. I think it's 32K. It actually looks pretty good for a VIC-20 game. Actually looks darn good for a VIC-20 game. The characters look like they are made of Play-Doh, but actually it plays pretty well. It replicates the music and sound nicely. This is actually a very good Popeye port for the VIC-20. that wraps it up. Our look at Popeye ports. You'll find a number of Popeye games in name only that are not based off the actual arcade gameplay. The Amstrad Color PC, the ZX Spectrum, the Game Boy, the Commodore 64, all had games called Popeye that are entirely different games. I do love the visuals of the arcade original, if not the gameplay itself. The mobile phone Java release is actually outstanding if you have a capable device. Like I said, bust out that Palm 3C and fire up the Popeye port on it. You won't be disappointed. Otherwise, the NES port is probably the class of the field. They're all capable ports, with the exception being the Odyssey² and Apple ports. Those are both just pretty bad. That's it for now. We'll see you next time. Until then, happy gaming. Peace.